Thanks everyone for joining and welcome to today's webinar, This Girl Can, Adventure Belongs to Everybody regardless of your size, your speed or your fitness. We're excited you're joining us today. This webinar will be recorded and will be made available on Yarra Ranges Council's website following our last webinar. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. It always was and always will be. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. If you would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which you are on, please feel free to make an acknowledgement of country in the chat box. My name is Grace Vandermelie, and my role at Yarra Ranges Council is Recreation Activation Officer, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm excited to be facilitating the This Girl Can Local Women webinar today. A huge thanks to Vic Health for their support and for making the This Girl Can campaign available for Victorian women. So I'll just start off with some housekeeping. As a member of the audience, you are set up on mute with your video off, so kick back and relax and enjoy the session. We encourage you to use the chat function if you have any tech issues, and you can message directly our tech support through Moreland Community Connection. We also have the Q&A section for any questions that you might have for Richelle, and we'll ask these at the end after her talk. You're welcome to use the chat function for any comments or observations you might have throughout the presentation, but if it is a question for Richelle, please use the Q&A function, and these will be answered at the end. So you should see access to both of these items at the bottom of your screen. If you can't, look for the three little dots and click or tap there to access the menus. So the structure of the webinar will be, we'll start off with Richelle presenting her experience, and then as we said, we'll have some time for question and answer. So I'd like to introduce you to Richelle Olsen, who started the body positive hiking organisation, Escaping Your Comfort Zone. Richelle is spreading the message that you don't have to go far, you don't have to go fast, and you don't need expensive gear to have some of the best adventures possible. All you need is the right people beside you along for the ride. Over to you, Richelle.
Thank you so much, Grace, and a big thanks to the Yarra Ranges Council and the 4 other councils and This Girl Can for giving me the platform to share my passion for adding more adventure to everyone's lives. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Whittlesea people, the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm coming to you today, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining me here today. Okay, so hi, I'm Richelle. I've been kind of adventurous all my life. When I was a little kid, I was 6 or 7, and I used to tell my mum that I was going to play with my friends, but instead I'd head down to the cliffs of Queenscliff and play in the caves in the cliffs. I mentioned this to my mum when I was as an adult, and she was mortified. She's like, but what if something happened to you? We knew nothing about this. And I'm like, nah, it didn't. I'm still here, whatever. Then basically, when I became an adult, one of the first things I wanted to do kind of when I finished school was to go to South America and learn about the Incas, because I'd learned about that at school. So when I was 21, I decided to do the Inca Trail in South America. Again, I said to my mum at that point, I said, oh, I'm going overseas. And she's like, oh, great. Who are you going with? And I'm like, by myself. And she's like, oh, great. So you must be going to America or London or something. No, South America. And she's like, okay, maybe. At that point, I was naive. I'd signed up for a 4-day hike at 4,000 meters of altitude. It sounded cool in the guidebooks. But at that point, I knew nothing about fitness, nothing about hiking. I attempted to do a local hike up to, which is the Yangs, which is just outside Geelong. I made it halfway up before I decided it was too hard. And then off I went to South America to climb real mountains. Let's just say I made it It was very, very difficult, but that gave me a real sense of adventure. So since then, I have scuba dived around the world. I've done over 20 triathlons. I have been to Everest Base Camp on the basis of a mate saying to me one day, "Do you want to do Everest Base Camp?" I went, "Yeah, all right. What is it? Where is it?" And I'd agreed to it before I knew what it was. Years later, I actually discovered it was over 100 kilometres of hiking, again at altitude, but I'd signed up for it, and then I realised I didn't really like walking, but that's okay. That's kind of been my life. I kind of sign up for things, and then future Richelle can deal with that. Since then, I've gone on to do an epic trip from where I cycled from Canada to Mexico on the world's longest mountain bike trail, over 5,000 kilometres in 5 months. And then I've done some solo bike tours around Italy and Germany and through the Alps of Italy, as well as Scotland. And a couple of years ago, I took my kayak over to Norway and Scotland. Sorry, that was last year. And basically drove around camping and kayaking and hiking and just exploring. I want to share with you it's all well and good for me to talk about this stuff, right? But I've got loads of videos which I've taken on my adventures, and I just wanted to share one of them with you. And this was where I had taken my kayak over to Norway. It's just a short 1-minute video. And before anyone's concerned, it was an inflatable kayak. I wasn't literally lugging one of those huge plastic ones over there. My inflatable kayak weighs about 15 kilos when it's all rolled up in a bag. And when you fly with Emirates, you get 30 kilos. So between my kayak and my tent, I had plenty of the luggage. So give me a minute. I'm going to share my screen. It's going to be a bit clunky, but just bear with me. So you can see, I'm just going to stop sharing there. You can see from there, and one of the things I wanted to show you there was the fact that when I do things and when I do adventure, I do it slowly. It's a bit different. I do it on my terms. And when I've been, say for instance, cycle touring around Europe, one of the things, you meet other cycle tourists and they go, the first thing they say, they don't ask what your name is, they say, where are you from? So that's Australia. How many Ks did you do today? And what's your average Ks per day? And I used to get these stunned looks when I'd say, well, I did 10 Ks today. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Like, what's the point of doing 10 Ks in a day? And I'm like, well, sometimes I see something that I like and I stop. And sometimes my legs aren't feeling it. And sometimes I just want to eat gelato and pastries and not do too much riding. And they're just like, but what's your average Ks? And I'm like, well, it's between 10 and 100. Some days I would do 100. Not very many, let's be honest. But it was a real eye-opener for a lot of people that I just do things on, like, slowly, on my terms. Because I spent too many years in the past doing things with groups who are all about going far and going fast. When I did the big Canada to Mexico trip, I did it with my partner at the time. He was much faster than me, but he had goals for, okay, each day we have to do this and we have to do this. And we were trying to get through Colorado before the snow. So there was a bit of a reason, but if I did it again, I would do it really at my own pace, because one of the things that people just assume that with adventure, it's you've got to go far and you've got to go fast. And I've discovered that that's not the case. So I used to think that I was the only one doing that. I was the only one not doing the epic stuff. But then I discovered there was so many other people who wanted to adventure that way too. So segue there. 4.5 years ago, I started Escaping Your Comfort Zone. Now, Escaping Your Comfort Zone is body positive adventures for women and for non-binary people. It's slow paced and it's always at the pace of the slowest person. We take loads of photos, we do loads of stop for snacks, we do loads of breather stops, and we embrace the huff and puff. You know that huff and puff when you're going up a hill and sometimes you're with a group and you're trying to keep it down because you're slightly sometimes ashamed of your fitness or something, because, well, the more you huff and puff, apparently the less fit you are. But we just go, it doesn't matter. We all huff and puff. Let's let it out. I actually once had a participant say to me, "Oh, this is so nice. When I walk with my husband, I'm always trying to pretend I'm not puffing. So that builds up my anxiety and makes me huff and puff more and makes me out of breath more. And I don't enjoy our hikes that we do together." I'm like, we are all about the huff and puff. So Escaping Your Comfort Zone, we do a lot of bushwalking. From most of our stuff's quite short, under 2 hours, very well signposted trails. But we do a bit of bike riding, we do some kayaking, some stand-up paddleboarding. We've done a bit of snowshoeing, some camping, both in cars, as well as carrying packs for overnight stuff. We've been quad biking, and we've even adventured to Tasmania, New Zealand and Scotland. We do it to have fun rather than go fast. I am going to now share my screen again and show you one of our epic Mount Buller weekends. So I'll open this up, and just to preface, you'll see here that a lot of the photos and videos look epic, top of mountains, but if you think about it, a lot of the stuff that we've done on Buller, and Buller is a really great example, that you can drive to the car park, the Summit car park. Then all you need to do is to get to the top of the mountain, and it's probably a 15 to 20, depending on how many stops you make, 15 to 20 minute walk. It is up a hill, but if you take it slowly, it's really accessible. And I remember the first time I took a group up there, somebody said to me, they said, "Richelle, never in my lifetime, I'm 48 years old, never in my life did I ever expect to be standing on top of a mountain." And one of the things that I like to put out there is the fact that there's amazing adventures to be had without too much effort and without too much fitness. So let me just share this one with you again. I'll share my screen. So that should give you a bit of an idea of how you could do something epic without it being overly physically taxing. With these with that one, for instance, if you can walk, you can do that. It's really not, it's not as such an overwhelming undertaking as what you think. I mean, if you wanted to go up to Mount Buller, you could do that in a day from Melbourne, particularly if you're from the Yarra Ranges area. But the other thing too is, for me, is that there's something really important about sunrises and sunsets wherever you are. Sunrises and sunsets make everything feel much more magical and much more epic. So I just wanted to, one of the other things too is, as an example, so one of my favourite hikes in Victoria is up near Mount Hotham, and it's called the Razorback Hike. And it goes basically along the razorback edge of a mountain for 11 k's out to Mount Feathertop and back again. So if you think about it, that's a 22k hike. So hands up who would go, not 22 k's for me. There's not a chance I would ever do 22 k's, particularly in the mountains. Yep, there's a few hands raised there. There's more hands raised. But what if I said that you can get some epic views in the first 10 minutes of that hike? So one of the things that I did, I was up there with my cousin, and she had said, well, we certainly didn't have time to do the full day, and we had 2 hours. I said, well, how about we walk out for 45 minutes and back for 45 minutes? Now, she'd never been in the mountains before, and we got some of the most amazing experiences within 45 minutes. So just because something seems big and long, it doesn't mean you have to do the whole thing. There might be mountains. I mean, for instance, there's one of the mountains in Scotland, Ben Lomond. I took a group over there last year, and it was a group of 4 people who were of varying abilities. And basically we decided before we started that we're going to get to where we're comfortable with. The intention wasn't to get to the top of the mountain. One of the participants got to the top of the mountain. She was quite a bit fitter than the rest of us, but she had that aim in her head. But just because a mountain's there doesn't mean you have to go up the whole thing. Just because a trail's there doesn't mean you have to do the whole thing. So if I then take that a little bit more local, we can go, okay, so what about amazing walks around the Yarra Ranges where you don't need navigation skills, they're well signed, and you can just use Google Maps. One of them is the Warburton Rail Trail. So I'm sure a lot of you know about the Warburton Rail Trail, and now there's the extension out to Yering, which is really exciting, and will be soon out to Yarra Glen. So at the moment that's 47 k's. So whether you do that as a walk or a bike ride, you go, oh, I couldn't do 47 k's. But what if you just did the section that goes from Warburton and back towards Lilydale for 5 k's or for 2 k's or for 20 minutes, and you turn around and go back the other way? I'm going to show you a quick clip of something where we did that. So one of the things that we like to do is introduce people to overnight hiking within escaping your comfort zone. We committed to do this weekend. You will see that that the people who did do this weekend were very brave with the weather. But what we did is we selected a spot that was about 7 k's outside Warburton. We parked there and we walked into Warburton and we stayed at the caravan park. So we didn't even bush camp or anything. We stayed at the caravan park because we knew it was going to be rubbish weather and we wanted some like dry facilities. So this is just a quick 1 minute share of the Warburton Rail Trail. Give me one tick. So you can see, thanks for sharing that link, Grace. So you can see from that one is that, so there's a couple of things. The beauty of the rail trail is that you can jump on and off wherever you like. The other thing too is the rail trail by and large is mostly flat. And you can actually get to sections which makes you feel like you're a long way from any kind of civilization. Those sections through the trees are actually really close to Warburton, and it's really, really well signposted. The other thing too is, I know it seems quite daunting to people to think about something as an overnight. I don't have the gear and I don't know which gear to use. One of the great things, there's lots of organisations out there that offer gear hire. Our favourites to hire with is a company called 50 Days Lightweight, because they hire the really lightweight stuff, which is great for when you're carrying it. But you get a gist of the fact that you can just do a 1K section. It's okay. Like, you don't have to do it big. Another one that's really popular out that way is the O'Shanassy Aqueduct track. That is absolutely spectacular, and that is basically on the mountainside above the Warburton Valley. Again, you can drive up to the car park, and for the most part, most of it's flat, and there's lots of different sections that you can do separately. And I know a lot of people will go, but I don't like doing an out and back. I don't like backtracking on myself. I prefer a loop or a one-way. Well, if you want to do a one-way, you can do a car shuffle. So you can put a car there and a car there. But don't disregard the out and back, because you actually will see totally different things on your way back. It's not always like just doing the same thing over. It's not like that at all. Another option might be, if you do prefer a loop, is the Listerfield Lake Circuit in Narre Warren. Again, really well signposted. There's only one short, sharp hill, and you get amazing scenery, and it's really accessible. It's not far from places. Birdsland Reserve in Belgrave is also one of my favourites. I used to live in Upwey, and that was one of mine where, again, it's well signposted, but you've always got access to your Google Maps to see where you are. It's not so far off the beaten track that you're going to get lost. I just want to leave you with a thought. So I've got a theory that as adults, we don't play enough. So have a think about what you do to play and what play really means. To me, play means an activity where you're in the moment without distraction, and it makes your heart fill with joy or excitement. You're not wanting to check your phone. You're not wishing you were somewhere else. And it just makes you just be. And I'd be interested to hear of what people do to play. And do you need more play in your life? I'm just going to leave you now with my favourite way to play at the moment. This is something I took up over COVID in the middle of winter without a wetsuit, but it is now my joy, and I do it almost every day. And luckily I live near the beach. So just give me one tick. And I'm going to wrap it up there. So open to as many questions as you like. And yeah, if there's anyone who is interested in seeing more about escaping your comfort zone or what I do, you can go to escapingyourcomfortzone.com. There's a whole lot of information there. I've just redone the website. And I also have my own website, which I haven't updated in a while, but it's there, is richelleolsen.com. So thanks for the opportunity, team, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Richelle. That was an amazing presentation, and those videos, they're just, the scenery is just very inspiring. It makes me want to get out there and get into nature, definitely. So we've got some questions that have come through. In particular, at the start, when you shared the video of the kayak, what type of kayak was that one, and where did you get your inflatable kayak? And do you know of any kayaking groups in Melbourne?
So I own a Cebalor Rio. I'll type it in. I'll type it Cebalor Rio. And I got it from Capacity Sports. So it is a great inflatable kayak. There is one downside that I don't like about it, because it doesn't have a fin underneath. If I'm not paddling, I do circles. And if you paddle with me, you realise that my kind of paddling is paddle for about 30 seconds, stop paddling, take it in, have a chat, take photos, whatever. That's not great when you stop and you just do circles. But if I did have a recommendation, my next inflatable kayak will probably be one of the Decathlon ones. So they do great inflatable kayaks, and I haven't tried one yet. However, from what I've seen, they're good, and they offer a 7-day return, so you can actually try them out. So I heard on the weekend.
Nice.
So that's that one. In terms of kayak clubs, I don't off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are if you do a Google.
Yeah, I think Google would be able to show
Because it's
some.
getting more and more popular. Like loads of people are buying kayaks, whether they buy the rigid ones or the inflatable ones. I particularly chose the inflatable one because I have a 4-wheel drive. Trying to get a rigid one on the roof, like it's bad enough getting bikes on the roof, getting a rigid, I just went, nah. So, yeah.
Thanks for that. And the next question we have is for single or solo mums, is there capability to bring kids along on the adventures that you go on?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Not all of our adventures, but for many of our adventures, we do allow people to bring their kids along, particularly our weekday ones, because we appreciate, particularly when you've got young ones, it's quite difficult. And one of our leaders, Jess, she has just started, so she has a 2-year-old little boy, so she's going to be running regular during the week ones, specifically aimed at people with children, because there's a certain, we want to make sure that if someone needs to be fed, if nappies need to be changed, there's issues, like the whole group stops, and that's what we're about. We do find, particularly for the weekend ones, a lot of the mums prefer it to be their own time. But we also recognise that sometimes you just can't get someone to look after the kids. So it's okay if kids come along. It's a bit, because of our restrictions at the moment with COVID and we're stuck to 10 people, it's a bit difficult to be able to welcome many kids, and because they sell out basically really quickly. So
yeah, hopefully we can increase those numbers as we continue to open up. So the next one was just, what was the name of the track in Belgrave? Was it, and I'm just trying to remember, Birdsland Reserve. Perfect. Yeah. I'll type that in the chat in a minute. So if anyone else has any other questions, please put them in the Q&A function. So We know that 64% of Victorian women who are inactive want to get active within the next 12 months. What would you say to those women, Richelle?
One of the things that we recognise as our group is the fact that there's a lot of barriers and anxiety around getting active, whether that be body image, whether it be safety, whether it be I don't have the right gear. Basically, in terms of that, what I suggest is at a very basic level, to reduce as many of those barriers as possible, is start with a close friend. You're more likely, if you're accountable to somebody else, you're more likely to do it. But don't make it, we need to exercise. Instead, let's go out and have a day out. For instance, I said to my cousin the other day, we'd been trying to catch up over coffee, and she'd mentioned that she had a day off, and I said, let's do a Kate and Richelle adventure. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so excited about that. And we're just going to go down to Lawn and go look at some of the waterfalls. And it can be something so simple as that. And you feel like you're away from it all. They're really well signposted. Pick a spot that is really well signposted and make it an adventure. When something becomes exercise and I have to do it, you're less likely to do it. And you're less likely to have fun. We're all about, okay, I mean, having gym memberships is well and good, but your mental health is important. And if your mental state is, oh, I've got to go to the gym, I should do this, and then if you don't, you feel guilty, as opposed to, oh, I'm excited about catching up with this friend and we're going to pick an adventure. And yeah, so that's what I really suggest to those people. If you're a little bit more brave, you can join a group like Escaping Your Comfort Zone, or there's other groups out there as well. There's Heart Foundation walks. There's other bushwalking clubs. If you Google bushwalking clubs or go to Bushwalking Victoria, if you're brave enough to show up to something like that. But even if you're not brave enough to do it individually, take your friend. And then it's kind of that safety in numbers, and you've got your person. If it turns out that it's not for you, it doesn't matter. You've got your person with you. So yeah, there's my advice there.
That's great. Thanks, Richelle. And we've got another question here that's come through. How do the more curvy women handle the bush wee when out hiking? Do you use any products like the she wee? Having to go when I'm out walking or riding is one thing that keeps me from going off the beaten track. It's a great question. I'd love to hear.
Very good point. So I personally used a she wee when they first came out many years ago. And I found I just got it all over myself. I haven't tried since. I don't actually know whether any of our group have tried them. But what we find as well is that there's certain methods for being able to do the bush wee. So one of the things is to practice your squats and practice your positioning before you need to do it. And bear in mind, you don't need to squat all the way down. You can basically do it almost as if you were sitting on a chair type thing. Pull your knickers forward, done. But the other thing too is use a tree. Use a tree to hold it. If you don't think you're going to be able to squat for the amount of time you need to, use a tree to lean on. Obviously check where you're putting your hands and that you're not going to interrupt an ant's nest or whatever. And also check where you're going and where you're walking for snakes and anything else that might be creepy crawly. And also leave no trace. So we highly recommend that you don't bury your toilet paper, that you take everything out. So just in Ziploc bags or whatever you might want to carry things in. And for those interested, there is, oh my goodness, what's it called? It's basically a pee towel, which the concept of it sounds a little bit gross, but it's a really environmentally friendly way to avoid toilet paper for number ones. And basically it hangs off your pack. but it's enclosed. So at no point, if anyone rubs against your pack, they're not going to touch your wee. It's enclosed, and you just take it home and you clean it. You throw it in the washing machine. But can I just say, as funny as this sounds, is practice in your backyard if you can, you know? Like, it's one of those things we all do it, and we all need to do it. It's human nature. And if you're out with other people, get them to be your sentry to make, oh, no one's coming, just go behind that tree. So that's what I recommend.
Great tips, Richelle. Thanks for that. And what would you say to someone who's had a negative experience with exercise and they're not sure that they can get back into things?
I guess along the lines of what I was saying before is removing the thought of exercise. So you might here's an example, right? So we had one of our members who had just gotten into cycling, and she was cycling along a path around some streets, and she had someone yell out from a car something derogatory towards her about her body. And that's a terrible experience, and there's quite a few members of our group who've experienced that. And so that's one of the reasons we've set up our group, particularly we originally set up our group for plus size women. We now accept everyone as long as they're willing to be non-judgmental and body positive. Once you find yourself within a group where you feel safe, the stuff that happens on the outside has much less impact. Because you're there, you're in the moment, and the important stuff is your feeling of inclusion and your feeling of doing something together. And you've got a team against the world if you need it. One of the things that we encourage is, in summer we have beach days. Now, for a lot of people in our group, and I'm guessing a lot of people here, the thought of putting on bathers or a bikini and going down to the beach is really daunting. Once you're surrounded by a whole heap of people in lots of different sized bodies, in bikinis, one pieces, yoga pants, shorts, t-shirts, everything, you're there and you're in it, and anything else is separate and kind of not your problem, because the important thing is your inclusion, and the opinions of others really don't matter in terms of that. So the advice I can give is find your crew, or convince your current friends to do the stuff with you.
Thanks, Richelle. And lastly, and I'm sure lots of people who are attending this would like to know, when is Escaping Your Comfort Zone walks in Melbourne starting back up?
Yeah, so we have tentatively started a few back up. Obviously, it's quite a shock to the system for our leaders who've been in lockdown to suddenly feel like running a walk for 10 people. It's really, like, I know I'm from regional, and we had it happen a couple of months ago, but it was, oh wow, I'm surrounded by 10 people. We've had a couple get added for Listerfield during the week, both daytime and nighttime. And I think the maximum people for that is like 6. They will start being added. The other thing too is our leaders, because they love adventure, they're off doing their own adventures for the next month or so at least. So look, realistically, it won't be back up and running full ball till early in the new year. However, there's still quite a bit going on in regional. So if you're up for a day out and up for an adventure, come and join us down Geelong Way or down Gippsland Way. There's going to be a few more of those coming up.
Perfect. That sounds fabulous, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of people joining. So I'd like to give a big thank you to you, Richelle, for sharing your experience with us all. It's been very insightful, and I'm sure everyone's appreciated it. So before we finish up, and while we're randomly drawing the winner of the Fitbit, we'll just be putting up a poll on your screen to get some feedback from everyone. So this will be 3 questions, and it should come up on your screen now that we'd just like you to answer if you can. And while everyone's answering that, I've just put Richelle's website in the chat. So go to the website and check out everything. I'm assuming that's where all the hikes go up, Richelle?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. There's a link to there to where our hikes go up.
Where they are. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
And I just wanted to add something before we wrap up, which I meant to include in the presentation is you don't need all the gear to start. Most of all the things that I listed, from the aqueduct to the rail trail to Listerfield, you just need a pair of runners. You just need, whether you wear running tights or whether you wear trackies or whether you wear shorts, whatever it might be, t-shirt, hoodie, you don't need anything technical. Until you start getting to the more technical.
You've just cut out again, Richelle, but I love that point about not needing the gear. You've just frozen, but hopefully you'll come back in a minute. We're going very well with the technology for the presentation, which was great. So while Richelle's, oh, there you go, you're back. You're saying about how you don't need all the gear.
No, you don't. And to get started, just go with what you have. Borrow your child's backpack and put a water bottle and some snacks and your jumper in it. It's not rocket science. And even in terms of wet weather gear, if you're going to go for a walk around Listerfield, if you don't have a jacket that fits or you don't have a waterproof, it doesn't matter, because you can go home and have a shower afterwards. Like, it's not, all that stuff's unimportant to get started.
Thanks for sharing that, Richelle. I definitely agree. Yeah. So we have a Fitbit as a door prize for each of these webinars. And so the winner of the Fitbit today is Justine Steele. So please send a note to the panelist, Justine, and just send us your email address in the chat, and we'll organise getting the Fitbit to you. So thanks everyone for coming. To check out more of the webinars like this, please search the This Girl Can Vic website. I'd like to thank the co-collaborators, the 4 other councils that have been involved, and in particular to Joe and Leah, who've helped out on this webinar today. As well as I'd like to thank Vic Health again for their support. And lastly, another thank you to Richelle for sharing with us her experience and wisdom. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your day and hopefully see you on one of the other webinars soon. Have a great week.